All right, buckle up. Back at it again. All right, seeing the place to be. Rick Serritella, telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin here on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. We're live each and every Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern, new time slot for the upcoming year. We're going to be here all year long, counting you down to Destination DC, the 2027 NFL Draft. This is your home for year-round coverage of the NFL Draft, and we are now into the 2027 NFL Draft cycle. It is our 25th year of providing independent scouting analysis, and we're so proud to bring it to you here on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. We are very interactive with it here, and we would like to see an increase in the chat room. And we've got the usual suspects already up, active, buckled up, hunkered down, ready to go. I see Adams Exploits with the good morning. Always great to see my fellow Jersey brethren. Of course, John Everett's been very active the last couple of weeks. Good morning to you as well. And Douglas Dorner, another Jersey roots guy. You know, we are broadcasting live from New Jersey. At least half of the show is. Rick Serritella here for the next hour or so. And, man, we're talking running backs today. It's a 2027 running back preview show. We're going to give you a little bit of a primer heading into the 2027 season, which is still 3 months away, 2 months until training camp gets underway. But we're going to kind of give you an overview, wide perspective, some of the top guys, some guys to keep an eye on, the underclassmen. Everybody we discussed will be draft eligible for the 2027 NFL Draft. And we did break down quarterbacks last week. So if you missed that episode, you can go back on the archives. And wherever you're tuned in across the social media platform, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, X, YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, spread the word. And we're here talking draft. Of course, I am one half of the show. By the way, happy Memorial Day weekend. I hope you guys have better weather than we are having here in New Jersey. It's not barbecue cookout time today. No, it's time for the Sunday Italian feast later on. But first, we got to do the show. And to do that with me is my co-host each and every Sunday here at 9 a.m. Eastern. He is former recruiting analyst at UCLA, former NFL scout for the St. Louis Rams and the Cleveland Browns. Of course, also an executive at the XFL, has worked in multiple front offices in the Canadian Football League, of course, delivering that Grey Cup with the Toronto Argonauts several years back, a former host of the NFL Today show on CBS, a mentor at Sports Management Worldwide, football GM and scouting course, which is starting June 1st, by the way, the next curriculum. Check out smww.com for that. And of course, newly assigned scout for the Panini Senior Bowl. Great event coming up in January featuring top prospects from around the country and maybe around the world as we get more international with it at the NFL. He is my co-host each and every Sunday here on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. Let's welcome in the legendary Russ Lande to the show. He joins us right now from Chi-Town. How are we doing today, Russ?
I'm doing great, man. It's a you talk about bad weather. They're back there for Memorial Day. It is pouring, raining cats and dogs here. So not a great day for Memorial Day barbecues here, but I'm doing great. We get to talk football. We get to talk all things running backs, which is awesome. I just want to throw a quick shout out. You mentioned, I was a scout for the Cleveland Browns. Well, the Cleveland Browns, despite many of their issues that they have as an organization, which I think will eventually continue to lead to them losing, I was excited that they added a second really great member of their front office. Firstly, they have Catherine Hickman, formerly Catherine Raish, who worked with me at the Montreal Alouettes. And now they added Mike DeReese, who is one of the good friends of mine and a young guy who sort of got shafted with the Giants. And now he's getting an opportunity to jump back in. So very excited to see Mike go there. I think Mike, Catherine, they give the Browns front office a fighting chance because they're two of the best in the business. Whether the rest of the front office can put things in order, that's TBD. But very happy to see Mike back in and to see Mike and Catherine working in the same building. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Both good friends of the show. Mike DeRice, one of the best in the business. He was out of action this past year, as you mentioned previously, with the New York Giants, longtime member of the Indianapolis Colts front office. And I can tell you firsthand, having known Mike, he is one of the hardest working grinders, never
Ever.
leaves a stone unturned, looks for every resource possible to get information. And we respect the grind and the hustle for Mike DeRice. Also, I must mention our good friend Mike Kelly, who's the commissioner of the Continental Football League. They got their league off the ground yesterday with some preseason games. Regular season is kicking off on Monday, tomorrow on Memorial Day. And we will have Mike Kelly on the show, a special pop-up edition, special presentation Wednesday morning with Coach Mike Kelly, who did you get a chance to work with Coach in the CFL, Russ?
I didn't get a chance to work with him, but we had tryouts down when he was a head coach at, I think, Widener was the school.
Yep.
So we had a few tryouts there, got to know him through that because he was close with Craig Smith,
yes,
longtime CFL guy. So Mike and I kept in touch over the years. You talk about a true football guy, like in his bones, through his life. He's not a guy that just showed up to coach one year and did it for a few years. This guy literally has been a coach his whole life. That's who he is. I'm excited. I'm always questioning if alternate leagues can work and do they have really long-term success. But if you're going to root for a guy to make it work, there's nobody like Coach Kelly. I mean, he's who you want to see succeed. He's everything that's good about football.
Yeah, I retweeted the United Football Media page. They had all the live stream action yesterday with the preseason games. There's one other one today, I think 3:50 p.m. Eastern time. And then, again, the regular season kicks off tomorrow. But tune in Wednesday morning for more on that league. We're excited about it. It's a kind of combination between NFL and CFL rules. And Obi Melifonwu, former first-round pick, hanging
UConn,
out.
Represented by Chris Martin when he came out of college.
Yeah, that's
there you
right.
Go.
Shout out Chris Martin. Shout out Craig T. Smith. Big fan of the show. One of our hardcore listeners each and every episode. Never missed a single show. And rest in peace to Craig Smith. We definitely miss his presence here. So, all right, let's get into it. Running backs, we're going to go through our rankings, our preliminary big board rankings. But first, Russ, just like we did last week when we're talking about positional overviews, evaluating running backs, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like running back position is maybe the easiest position to transition from college to the NFL. I think in terms of learning the playbook, in terms of responsibilities, in terms of just skill set, it's kind of a easier position for me personally to evaluate. But I'm just curious to get your thoughts on the running back position, what you look for, some of the traits and characteristics.
Firstly, yeah, I do think in terms of ease of evaluation, a running back is generally one of the easier positions. I think the only thing that's really tough for me for running backs is, especially from the big schools, the Alabamas that are so dominant, sometimes instincts can be a little difficult to figure because the holes that get opened are so gigantic that you don't know if they saw it because it was so gigantic, or they instinctively felt it coming before it started to open, because the holes are huge and they're so fast they open. That's one of the areas that to me is so tough for running backs. But, one of the things I always teach, because with the SMWW, I have a sheet that I use each week for each position that we talk about. And when we do running backs, one of the most important things I try to show them is I don't list speed as one of the traits. And I do that because I want to get into the nitty-gritty of, hey, you can't fall in love with 40 times for running backs. You can't just worry about, are they a 4-3 guy, a 4-4 guy? Because with a running back, it's, do you have enough speed? Yes, we all would love the guys who are 4-3 and just run away from everybody. But if you look at some of the great running backs in the last 15 years, most of them are not 4-3 guys. They're mid 4-4s, high 4-5s. The Kareem Hunts, right? Even Saquon Barkley was a 4-4. He wasn't a 4-3, like running away from people. Christian McCaffrey, I think it was a 4-5-2 guy, if I remember correctly. I mean, so when I teach these classes, I really try to talk about they need enough playing speed, but more importantly, short area quickness. If you don't have short area quickness, the ability to make quick cuts, and that ties in with instincts, because you can have great quickness, but if you can't read the play, you're not going to anticipate and make the cut. So short area quickness, instincts, and something I call, an old scout when I first got in the business told me this. I have not heard it much in the league, but I love the saying, which is he a 2 and a through guy? A 2 means he can make the sharp cut to get to the hole, and through means he has that explosion and burst to get through it. So when I first started, my boss, Jack Faulkner, I ended up talking with a lot of old scouts, guys in their 60s and 70s who basically had been around football since water was invented. And they would always talk about the first thing they wanted to know, is he a to and through guy? And unfortunately, since those old guys went, I don't think I've ever heard that again in the league. But I tend to look at that as something I grade people on, is that short area quickness, the instincts, that are they a to and through guy? Because if you can't make the sharp cut to get there, you're not playing in the NFL. And if once you get there, you don't have that ability to put a foot in the ground and explode through the hole, that's really rare for a guy to make it. And the other thing I try to point out to people when you're evaluating running backs, one is be very cautious evaluating change of direction and cutting ability when you're looking at inside runs versus outside runs. Because a lot of guys, and almost all of them on outside runs, it takes a few more steps because they're going faster. Sometimes you'll see that outside run, you see the guy take a few steps and say, oh, he's not a real agile guy. And then on inside runs, he's very nifty and agile. So I try to hammer home, be very cautious killing a guy's cutting ability on outside runs. The guys that can just put a foot in the ground when they're almost at full speed, like a McCaffrey, they're rare. Most guys need an extra step or two when they're on the outside. On the inside, guys can do it. And we should add, you and I know 20 years ago when we first got in this business, because we both have a little gray showing, you could have running backs that could carry the ball and then they come off the field when it was passing situations. You could have guys who couldn't catch. Nowadays, if you aren't good enough in pass protection and with good hands, you may as well not even bother trying to come to the NFL. It's just, you have to be able to contribute in the passing game. And I've said this before on our show. I think you were the one who remembered his name. There was a running back who came out of BC about 10 years ago, one of the leading running backs in the whole nation, but couldn't catch a cold. The ball would hit his hands. It was awful. And he went in the 4th round of the draft. Everybody was hoping he could.
Andre Brown, was it? Or
I can't remember it.
Andre something. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And he was an elite runner, but he never improved. And he was gone out of the league in 2 years. Despite when he carried the ball, he was a productive player. But if you can't contribute in the passing game, it's virtually impossible to win a roster spot in the NFL nowadays.
Yeah, so many things I want to follow up on there. I'll try to get it all in and then toss it back to you. So 3 down backs, right, is very rare. And so when you have one like a Jeremiah Love or a Saquon Barkley, those are the guys you're going to see go in round 1. But you're right.
Yes.
Most backfields are by committee these days. And on 3rd down, you're looking for the pass catcher. You're looking for that blocker, right? Now, a couple things that you mentioned that I want to just kind of follow up on. So you mentioned the to and through. Yeah. I immediately went back to those Mike Shanahan Denver Broncos teams, who really Shanahan popularized that zone blocking attack. And he found guys undrafted that were one cutting up, 2 and through. Mike Anderson comes to mind. Selvin
Young. Gary.
Orlandis Gary. All these guys were late round or undrafted free agent. Terrell Davis was a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
Out of Georgia.
He turned out okay.
Yes. Mile high salute. So to me, it goes back to Shanahan, those late 90s teams, where to me, you saw the influx of zone blocking schemes. These one cut and up guys are so valuable. And I agree with you. You got to be very careful of these guys who look to cut it outside, because that does not translate to the next level. And I go back, we're dating ourselves now. I go back to Blair Thomas out of Penn State, 1st round pick by the Jets. Every time he got the ball, he tried to cut it outside. It just didn't work. And dancing feet, right? You talk about burst, hitting the hole hard. Travion Henderson from New England had difficulty, I thought, running with authority and hitting the hole hard. And you want guys who can really, I think, keep it between the tackles, because it's going to be very few. Like Michael the Burner Turner is a guy that comes to mind where he was fast enough to cut that outside edge. Very few guys are going to have that kind of acceleration. And to your point, like we've talked about it, Alfred Morris was an undrafted guy, ran a 4.6 something, 1,000-yard rusher in the league. But just some other things here. I think contact balance, ball security, and then again, size and durability. These smaller backs just don't pan out in the NFL. So when you see these small guys There's a reason why they go late. They go undrafted because of the size. A lot of times isn't conducive to a 17 plus game schedule. So those are just some other things that I wanted to follow up on. The kid out of Arkansas, Mike Washington, right? We talk about the value of ball security. And I know he had 12 fumbles throughout his career, can't catch the ball out of the backfield. And there's a reason why guys like that tend to slide to day 3, despite the size, the speed, the measurables. Anything there you want to follow up on, Ralph?
Well, firstly, you're 100% correct. If ball security is an issue, and there are coaches who have done a great job. Coach Coughlin obviously did a great job with Tiki Barber. He changed a little bit of the way he held the ball, helped him cut down on the fumble. So you can definitely impact and help guys with their fumbling. But historically, data shows if you were a fumbler in college, you're probably going to be a fumbler at the next level. So that's a big issue. The thing that I also want to mention that I try to teach whenever I do the SMWW class, I'm a big believer. I love running backs who can lower their shoulders, get their pad leveled down, and accelerate into contact because it helps them keep their balance. You mentioned contact balance is so vital for a running back. But I also tell my people, hey, take a deep breath when you look at upright runners because there are some, Eddie George, even Derrick Henry a little bit.
Jerome Bettis.
Jerome Bettis, and perhaps the greatest of all time, Eric Dickerson, who was as upright as they ever come, who were great running backs. So I try to tell people, hey, if they're really athletic, really tough, really competitive with all the skills, but they just run a little high, don't kill them. You may not like that they run high, but if they have all the other traits, you don't want to eliminate them. But yeah, it's running back to me, it's changed so dramatically as a position. The guys who struggle mentally, who can't handle pass protection, it's really hard to get them on the field because if they can't adjust to things when the quarterback has to make a change and they have to change the protection call for the running back and he can't handle it mentally, how do you trust that guy? Because it's not only about picking up the blitz, which I think everybody, when fans think about, if he doesn't pick up the blitz, well, the quarterback will figure out. It's like, no, your quarterback might get killed. And the quarterback's the most important guy in the field. So even if his pass pro is ugly, just keep the quarterback from getting his head knocked off. That's why pass protection matters first and foremost, then so you can complete the pass.
Yeah, you want to see at least the willingness, and then you can coach up the technique.
Yes, if they have the willingness, most of the time they'll at least be adequate. But a lot of guys, they duck down, they put that shoulder, and they sort of turn that, or they dive at the feet before the guy even gets close to them. Those guys scare the bejeebers out of me.
All right, over to the chat room. Adams exploits. I'm so old, I go back to Wilbert Montgomery, the old Eagles running back. Wilbert was a stud, says John Everett. Douglas Dorner, Commanders, Alfred Morris out of FAU, group of 5. Yes, mid-major program. Adams exploits says Saquon is an elite running back, but so-so as a receiver and a poor blocker. Well, he does have.
I don't know if I'd say so-so as a receiver.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit above average.
Pretty special out of the backfield. Yeah.
Barry Sanders ran a 4.55. John Everett.
40 time is not all there is as a running back.
Emmett Smith.
I love it if they can run 4.3. Yeah, exactly. I want instinctive guys, short area quickness, tough guys, instinctive guys. And it also takes a special player because running backs take a pounding. If they don't have that mental makeup to just battle through, hey, my finger just got broken, tape it up, I'm going back out there. Or I've got this thigh bruise where the whole top of my thigh is black and blue, and it's like a blood blister, basically, but gigantic. But they just go back out there because it's a brutal position, the punishment they take. And guys who check themselves out whenever they get dings, those are the guys you think, it's going to be hard. And one of the old sayings, and I know you've heard it many times, it's sort of a way that colleges tell you their guy is not super tough, is they'll always say, hey, when he's 100%, he is going to give you 100%, which tells you when he's just a little dinged, he's not really a competitive player. And when you hear that about a running back, you got to run for the woods because those guys don't make it because all players get dinged in football, but running backs take a beating.
Every week, no doubt about it. When you talk about contact balance and burst, I do think of Cam Edwards, who John Everett says, can Cam Edwards duplicate the production of Kenneth Walker this season at Michigan State? Doak Walker Award winner, Super Bowl MVP. I will tell you, Cam Edwards really caught my attention at UConn. He actually, I thought him and Skylar Bell carried that offense. I know Skylar Bell had a record-setting receiving season, but Cam Edwards on the ground, this guy hits the hole hard. He breaks tackles, keeps his legs turning. I actually like him. He's sitting right now as our 21st draft eligible running back. Remember, not all of these running backs are going to declare, so that kind of puts him as a potential mid-round prospect. I think he's somewhere in that day 3 category. We have him at 5'10" and 4/8, 210 pounds, estimated 40-yard dash time 4.55. So Russ, good size, not great speed, but you talk about the toughness, durability, contact balance, ability to break tackles. Cam Edwards is a very solid prospect coming into the season. And yes, he goes over to Michigan State, where they also got the UConn left tackle that's slipping my mind right now. And those are probably the top 2 prospects on the Spartans. But this is a very talent-depleted team. I do have concerns about the offensive line. You mentioned some of the bigger Power 4 programs have these great offensive lines. Michigan State, not so good. So I think you have to factor all that into the equation.
You do, but I will say when you watch this kid play, and you point to what he did at UConn and what I think he will do at Michigan State, and that NFL teams, they value it is the rule of thumb in the NFL, when you look at it, running backs, they either better be able to make you miss or break tackles. It's one or the other, because if you can't do those consistently, one of them, you're probably not playing at the next level. Now, is this kid going to make a lot of guys miss? I don't think he's going to make a ton of guys miss. I don't think he's naturally elusive. But when you talk about a hard runner, can run through, especially most broken tackles are not pretty formed tackles. They're guys diving in, taking on the thighs, guys reaching out with an arm. Yeah, this guy will get through that. And guys who can do that tend to overproduce their draft spot, whereas guys who don't break tackles, don't gain yards after contact, often go higher because they're better athletes, and then they produce less at the pros or don't make it. I think Edwards is a guy that may go a little bit lower than anticipated and turn into a better pro, because he's got that, hey, just give me the ball. I'm going to put my head down. I mean, I don't want to start not comparing him definitively, but there's a little bit of that Scatabo to this kid. I mean, a little bit of that sort of, I'm going to play like it's the last day I ever played, but I've got physical talent to back it up. I'm not a midget. I'm not a 4'8" guy. I run hard. I have good speed, not great speed, but good enough. And I've got the power and the strength and the balance to be a productive runner breaking tackles. So I like Edwards. I think there's a lot there to look at to see a guy that could make it as a pro.
Yeah, and he does a little bit of everything well. I think the big thing is there's no elite traits there, I think, which prevents him from being a top 100 type of prospect. But I think he's a guy to come in, be a very capable backup at the next level. And, you know, if he gets 1,000 yards behind that offensive line, Ben Maranovich or something, I think is the offensive lineman they got from UConn. But I remember he's a very banged up, injury-prone offensive lineman who's athletic as hell. I know he can dunk a basketball at 300-plus pounds, but 330 now. He's actually gained considerable amount of weight. But, hey, this is the running back preview show. We're going to stick to running backs. In fact, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get into our 2027 big board rankings. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. For allaccessfootball.com. Thanks for watching our live stream coverage of the 2026 NFL Draft. Just a quick programming reminder, the All Access Football Draft Watch show airs every Saturday morning live at 10 a.m. Eastern with yours truly, along with my co-host, Russ Lande, who brings 30 years of NFL, CFL, and XFL scouting experience each and every week. We count you down with hard-hitting analysis, the prospects, the names you need to know. The countdown is on. Destination Washington, D.C. begins now. Make sure you tune in every Saturday morning, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, as we count you down to the nation's capital for the 2027 NFL Draft. Your home for year-round coverage of the NFL Draft and everything pigskin, bringing you the names you need to know first since 2002. It's what we do. Make sure you follow along with the NFL Draft Bible, the official Bible of the draft used by all 32 NFL teams. Thank you so much for supporting independent media. Now, back to our 2026 live stream coverage of the NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. Buckle up! All right, we're back at it again. All right, seeing the place to be, along with Russ Lande here on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. We're breaking it down, chopping it up, talking. There's Russ talking running back big boards for the 2027 NFL Draft. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in. Thank you so much for the chat room feedback. Hey, while you're here, make sure you like, share, subscribe, spread the word. We're here each and every Sunday. 9 a.m. Eastern. In season, we'll be recapping the college football weekend that was, previewing the college football schedule ahead. That'll be in season. During the off season here, we're going to get into our positional previews. We did quarterback last week, running back this week. We'll continue to move through those positions in the months of June and July. We'll get you right into the training camp. And we'll be here breaking it down, chopping it up. Rick Serritella along with Russ Lande here on this Memorial Day weekend. We hope you have some great plans and some family time, maybe celebrating with some friends. We got some UFL on later on today. We've got some Continental Football League preseason. The football calendar just doesn't stop. CFL preseason. I was trying to get the flicker going with all these different monitors. The CFL is in full throttle, so we'll try to sneak some of that talk in throughout the season. And the United Football League, I think, is entering the final week. Two teams have clinched, DC and Orlando. And I had the Louisville Kings as my preseason prediction. They're gaining some steam. We'll see if they can sneak into the playoffs there. But this is our 2027 running back preview show. We talked about some of the traits, characteristics, evaluation philosophies in the first half of the show. Now we're going to get into the actual big board. And I'll just go through our top 10, Russ, first, and we'll take it from there. Tell me who you want to talk about. But I'll tell you, when he was a freshman, this kid, Jaden Ball out of Florida, really caught my eye. You talk about size, 230 pounds, no wasted movement, hits the hole with authority, burst and acceleration in the second level, can break those arm tackles that we were discussing. So he's coming in right now at number one on our big board. Obviously, things can change. Kewan Lacey out of Ole Miss had a very productive season at 5'9" and a half, 210 pounds. And then you've got these Longhorns runners who, we've had a little sneak peek at the Blesto ratings. Hollywood Smothers and Rayleigh Brown, two of the highest rated running backs, Russ. Of course, Rayleigh Brown is one of those quick, speedy, elusive guys in the elk of a Michael Burner Turner that we talked about. 5'7.5", 195, but 4.3 type of speed. Then, of course, you cannot forget that monumental playoff performance that Mark Fletcher had for those Miami Hurricanes. Again, a big physical bruising back. And we've got quite a few of those. Ahmad Hardy out of Missouri, who we touched base on his unfortunate incident. We can get into more of that. There's some updates there with his recent medical update. We'll get into that in a second, I'm sure. Cameron Dickey out of Texas Tech, another big, compact, physical runner, as is LJ Martin out of BYU, who a lot of people thought would declare for this past year's draft. He's another big one, almost 6'2", 225. Justice Haynes goes from Michigan to Georgia Tech, another compact runner between the tackles, was injured last year, so he looks for a fresh start at the Yellow Jackets. And then Isaac Brown, who a lot of people think might be the best running back in this year's draft, out of Louisville. Phenomenal athleticism, 5'8.5", 190 pounds, also expected to test through the roof. So that's kind of our top 10 running back big board. Russ, where do you want to begin?
Well, first, I got to begin with, you mentioned the Fletcher kid. You talk about a guy that I think for a lot of people around the country that hadn't really watched the U last year, they may have heard the name that this was their running back, but they didn't really know much about him. And when you watch Fletcher, is he a freak athlete? No, he's not one of those top tier rare Saquon Barkley type athletes. But I think when you watch him play, he's sort of a little bit old school. He's bigger, over 6'1", thick bodied, runs with it, not only physicality, but he runs with an aggressiveness that you don't often see. A lot of guys that are physical, they can run through contact, but they're not initiating it. They tend to dip away from some hits. This kid goes to find contact. I love the way he plays football. I think he's going to make it at the next level. I think there are going to be some limitations because I do think there are some speed questions on situations where getting outside the tackles. But I really like the way he plays. And I think in today's NFL, where some teams, if you look around at teams like the Eagles, where they are running the ball a little bit more, the Browns, that they like to run the ball, a team like the Texans, I could see this kid really having a home for a franchise like that because of what he brings to the game. You mentioned the Rayleigh Brown kid. This kid to me is one of the most unique guys because I think we talked about it before. Little guys tend to break. So you have to be cautious in saying, yeah, I love this kid. I'm going to make him a guy that gets 15, 20 touches. I mean, he's going to get killed if you do that. But if you use him correctly, when you watch this kid, the twitch, the explosion, what he can do in the open field, this is a kid to me you look at and say, this is a guy. I don't want to say that he's going to be a dominant sort of knick-knack back, sort of a jack of all trades guy. He can do a lot of good things with the ball in his hands in space. A little Darren Sproles-like, if you want to flash back to another little guy. He's a really impressive guy. Those are the two guys that jump out of guys I really wanted to say, hey, there's something there. Ahmad Hardy, very intriguing kid, similar to Fletcher. Big kid, thick body, runs hard, breaks tackles. There's a lot to like. Obviously, we got to see where he comes out in terms of getting healthy after unfortunately being shot in that whole melee. You mentioned the ball kid at Florida. I mean, you talk about a kid that looks the part. This kid looks like an NFL guy 2 years ago. I mean, he is a big, pretty-looking kid. He can run, and I mean run. For a big kid, he can run, and he can run through contact. He's a really intriguing guy. There's a lot of talent this year, but like always, and this is, I think, the constant debate, I don't know if there's a running back in this class that's going to warrant, hey, I got to be a top 10 pick. I think you're looking at a lot of guys that are really solid running backs that really are second and third and fourth round picks, not top 10 or 15 guys in the first round.
Yeah, we might see one of these guys sneak into the first round. It's possible, but I agree with you. I think it's more day two, probably the sweet spot. Of course, we got a long ways to go. And obviously now Ahmad Hardy's situation out of Missouri, we talked about it briefly last week. He was shot attending the bike club. He has since been released from the hospital and he's began his rehab process. I saw Missouri posted a video of him the other day and he seemed to be in relatively good spirits, but we just don't know. Some internal healing has to be done before they can assess how much longer he's going to be out. We really don't know if he'll be ready for the start of the season. Quite frankly, we don't know if he's going to play at all. And quite frankly, we don't know if it's career ending because it's still to be determined from Ahmad Hardy out of Missouri, who had a very productive year, one of the top leading rushers in the nation last season.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a major question. I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's easy to watch film and identify generally which players can make it, which cannot, how intangibles matter. Well, part of intangibles are the medical. And a lot of guys have to, even if they have great final years in college, they have to go to the combine and be checked out thoroughly so that teams feel confident that, hey, not only is he healthy now, but we can project that his body can take the pounding and he can survive being not a one contract guy, but a two contract guy. Because for running backs, you never hear them talk about 3 contracts. It's just, can you be a 2 contract guy? And that's what teams are going to have to figure out with Hardy. I'm sure this young man is going to do everything he can to get back to be where he wants to be and be at his top form physically. But it doesn't matter what he does. It's going to be what the NFL team's medical staffs say about him in terms of, does he have the ability physically to hold up after this unfortunate injury?
All right, Russ, Lande, Rick Serritella breaking down the running backs. And you mentioned Mark Fletcher. He might be a good fit for the Eagles. Adams Exploit says he's an Eagles fan. And Tanks Bigsby, 5.9 yards per carry last season. Saquon Barkley was at 4.1 yards per carry. But Tank Bigsby, one of these bigger backs, says, hey, that was a fullback back in the day. Mark Fletcher kind of fitting that mold as well. Douglas Dorner says Jaden Baugh, consensus top 5, great production, 0 fumbles. We talked about ball security. Yes, it is a key metric. And yes, a lot of his runs do go for a first down or a touchdown. And I would say he is my leader in the clubhouse to be a first round pick if somebody is going to emerge. Now,
I would agree with
John
that.
Everett. Yeah, John Everett says, why didn't Carson Hansen make the big board? Seems to be a great situation for Penn State. I think we posted the top 25 on the website. I'm looking at the internal big board. He's sitting at 31, 6 foot, 220. We have him at around 460 range. I think that's what you want to see coming over from Iowa State, following Matt Campbell. I think he's in that day 3 category, and you just want to make sure he can get his feet out of the mud and does have that acceleration and burst. But yeah, he's somebody we're going to continue to monitor and keep an eye on. So he's not too far out of the range. And with that being said, we'll shift into our second tier of rankings. We'll go 10 through 20. Jacoby Williams from Texas Tech, Caden Dorm from LSU, Jordan Marshall from Michigan, who came on last year when Justice Haynes went down, Darius Taylor from Minnesota, who's had some productive seasons, had some injuries, feels like he's been in that Gophers backfield forever. Nate Frazier out of Georgia coming in at 15. He's expected to have a big season. I could see him maybe even moving up boards even more so. And then we talked about the Texas backfield. There was a turnover this offseason because they had Quintravion Wisner, who we talked about. He's since transferred to Florida State. We have him at 16. CJ Baxter goes to Kentucky. He stays in the SEC. Sandwiched in between them is Wayman Jordan out of USC, another running back who got out to a hot start last season, then got injured. And then Abu Sama III out of Wisconsin. The Badgers don't have too many high-profile draft prospects, but Sama, very productive there. And then Xavier Brown out of Virginia. We talked about him last season. Jamari Taylor, him and Jamari Taylor were a 1-2 punch. Taylor did not get drafted. He was the more physical between the tackles guy. Brown is the more elusive guy, the guy that looks to cut it to the outside, 5'9", 200 pounds, good speed. And then Cam Edwards, who we already talked about, sitting there at 21. Anybody there, Russ, that you want to follow up on?
Well, firstly, you mentioned Frazier. I mean, he may be sort of the question mark of everything, because when he is at his best, and I say it all the time, you take his top 20 or 30 plays, this kid's got freaky talent. He's twitchy. He's explosive. He's not a little dude. He's not like he's 5'7", 180. He's over 5'9", over 210 pounds. I mean, there's a lot to like about him. And he is a guy that has that legit, I got to go speed. I'd like to see more consistency from him, but I think he's the guy that if we're talking about the Baugh kid as a guy who could potentially be the one guy in the first round, I think this is the kid that could make the move to challenge Baugh, because he's so explosive and dynamic. Teams will fall in love with that. You mentioned the Darius Taylor kid. To me, he's the ultimate sort of what is he going to be in terms of, can he stay healthy and can he be consistent? Because when you look at him run the ball, he looks like an NFL
big games, right? And then he disappears.
Exactly. And it's almost like, what is it? Why is it so difficult for this guy to show us he's an elite guy game after game? And that's one of those ones where, and this is why scouting matters, going to the school matters, because you get to find out what it is that's causing this kid to not be the guy every week, the dominant guy that everybody on ESPN is talking about as the bell cow, the elite running back. What is it that makes him have a great game and then a so-so game? That's what you have to find out as a scout. I think he's another guy that I could see in that Mark Fletcher could get in and be better than where he gets picked, because he does have the ability to be a physical tackle-breaking running back. There's a lot of talent there with Darius Taylor.
No doubt about it. And Jordan Marshall's a guy I'm intrigued by. Technically a redshirt sophomore, so he is draft eligible. And I'll tell you what, I mean, a full season, he kind of just had some spot duty filling in the second half of the year. But 5'9" or 5'9" and 6'8", 216 pounds. Again, between the tackles, runner, contact, body balance, ability to break tackles. I really like what he brings to the table. And I like this Wayman Jordan out of USC. You think back to Woody Marks came out of there a couple years ago for the Texans. I think he could make a similar type of impact. Okay. And some of these SEC runners, these are the guys that are pretty dangerous. You got to keep an eye on them. Caden Dorm, LSU's got a stacked backfield. Dorm there in line for the workload. Nate Frazier, both of these guys around 5'9", 200 pounds. And then we mentioned CJ Baxter out of Kentucky, a bigger back who really, you think about Chris Rodriguez, in that Kentucky Wildcats backfield, and I think he's now with the Commanders, or he may have signed somewhere else. But Kentucky likes the big bodies, bruising backs. Of course, they always got gargantuan offensive linemen there, especially the last couple seasons for the Wildcats. So that brings us to the next tier of running backs, and I think this is where you find a lot of the transfer backs, right? So you kind of want to see how they're going to adapt to their new environment. We mentioned Cam Edwards at Michigan State coming over from UConn at 21. Cam Cook, who tore up the nation at Jacksonville State. If he didn't lead the nation in rushing, he was right up there. He goes to West Virginia. Turbo Richard at 23 goes from Boston College to Indiana, and I expect Indiana to again use a tandem backfield with the running back who returns there. Antoine Raymond out of Rutgers really had a good season for them last year. Underrated recruit. He's going to be the bell cow there for the Scarlet Knights. Jamal Roberts out of Missouri, Wayshawn Parker out of Utah, Dylan Riley out of Boise State, Deshaun Bishop out of Tennessee had a productive year, and then Wayne Knight out of UCLA, who had a phenomenal year for James Madison, the Dukes. He follows Bobby Chesney over to UCLA. Again, one of these undersized, speedier backs, uber productive. And then Caleb Komolafi right there in your backyard out of Northwestern, rounding out the top 30. And let's see, any other guys worth noting? Gavin Sawchuk goes from Florida State to Northwestern. We mentioned Carson Hansen, Iowa State to Penn State. And then Jaden Thomas out of UNLV. Let's not omit him because Dan Mullen has been building quite a program there at the UNLV Rebels. I guess there's some NIL money floating around the Las Vegas Boulevard Strip there, Russ. But anybody there you care to elaborate on?
Well, the Cam Cook to me is one of the more intriguing guys because, I mean, you talk about a kid that was a dominant, not just a good player. He was dominant, almost 1,700 rushing yards at Jacksonville State. When you watch this kid play, is he huge? No, he's about 5'9" and change, but he's a 200-pound kid, runs aggressively. He's got a little bit of wiggle so he can make guys miss. This kid, I think, is going to go from a lesser-known guy, which I think is where he really should be right now because it was Jacksonville State. I think he's going to make a jump this year. I think at West Virginia, you're going to see him put up numbers. You're going to see him be productive. I think he's going to all of a sudden be one of those guys in that second group of running backs that's going to start getting attention. I like the Bishop kid. I think he is a guy that doesn't get much credit. I think he's a good football player. And I'm very intrigued to see how the Knight kid does at UCLA. Because this is a kid, obviously, a dominant small school guy coming up from James Madison. He's not obviously a big, huge kid. He's more of a twitchy, explosive, athletic kid. Can it translate at the UCLA level? Because he's no longer going against lower-level defenders. Now he's going up against the big boys, Big Ten defenders, guys who can chase plays down. Does Knight have the ability? Does he have that juice to still get outside? Because I don't think he's ever going to be the guy that's going to make his living between the tackles. So he is very intriguing to me. I can't wait to see how he translates his games to the bigger level. I have more confidence that Cook is going to be an impact guy than I do Knight of the two guys that are transferring from lower level.
Yeah, I like Cook. I think he has a real opportunity to prove his value at the P4 level. A couple other big backs. This is going to be a big back draft. And just a couple guys to keep an eye on because there's a lot of hype around them. Dante Dowdle out of Georgia, 6'1" and 6'8", 227 pounds. This guy's a truckload with burst. And then Daniel Hill out of Alabama, who's probably the biggest running back the Crimson Tide have had since Derrick Henry, 6'1", 236, Russ. And, as you mentioned and alluded to earlier in the show, they are going to pave wide open lanes for that young man. And then one other guy I want to mention, it's Lee Beebe Jr., whose name slipped my mind, the other Indiana running back who was the running back 3 this year. He's going to kind of elevate into a timeshare with Turbo Richard, who comes over from Boston College. So that's the 1-2 punch this year in Indiana. And that backfield will be completely turned over with Josh Hoover stepping in for Fernando Mendoza as well.
Well, I'll mention, you mentioned the Hill kid at Alabama. I think that's going to be a great test for evaluators because he's big, he's powerful, he can run through stuff, But like we talked about, the holes are going to be gigantic. He's going to get a running start before contact a lot of time. I could see him being a guy that puts up huge numbers. The media gets on board and starts hyping him as an elite player. Let's see what the scouts think when they get to actually watch film and see if this guy really has natural instincts, or is it a case like it was with Trent Richardson, who was a big physical runner but wasn't naturally instinctive that a lot of scouts missed on. And Hill, to me, is a guy that I'm interested to see how this year turns out for him and to watch the film and get a feel for, is he a naturally instinctive guy, or is he just a big, powerful runner who's dominant at that at a P4 school like Alabama because they open the holes and he doesn't have to find the hole. It's going to be an intriguing thing to watch as the season goes on.
Rick Serritella, Russ, Lande, breaking it down with our running back preview show. Over to the chat room. Douglas Dorner says, Dickey out of Texas Tech, great production. Hopefully reduces the fumbles. Had 4 a year ago. Definitely want to see that ball security. Fletcher, unranked by consensus. Only 1 fumble, 72 first downs. I'm not sure. I'm not a big fan of consensus big boards.
Who cares, right?
We kind of moved through the process with blinders on, and we'll go from there. Sleeper UTSA Will Henderson III, who is not draft eligible, but somebody will be keeping an eye on in the future drafts. And John Everett agrees. He's looking forward to Cam Cook it up in West Virginia. And he could be a fast riser.
I was going to mention, with Fletcher, I think one of the big questions that people want to answer is, we all know if it's between the tackles, he can run hard, he can put his head down. I think what people want to figure out is, does he have athletic ability or is he a straight line athlete? That's what I think NFL teams are going to try to figure out with him, because we know if you send him on a locomotive train straight ahead, he's going to run through contact, break tackles, whatever. But how does he do when he has to adjust? Can he do that, or is he stiff in the hips? I think that's the reason that there is some debate as to where he goes. And I think there's going to be a lot of attention paid to him this year. NFL people told me that most teams didn't even look at him last year because they had heard he was going back for another year. So there hasn't been a lot of study of him hip-wise. I want to see where is he flexibility-wise, because stiff running backs rarely make it.
Yeah, I would say I think Fletcher might have made a bad decision returning back to Coral Gables, because I kind of viewed him as like maybe a mid-round guy. And then after the college football playoff performance, I said, wow, this guy's got so much momentum. It's a somewhat weak running back class. Like, I thought he would have maybe even snuck into the day 2 equation. Yep. I'm sure he's thinking that he's returning to increase his stock to become a first-round pick. But I'm not sure after that playoff run that Mark Fletcher can really increase his draft stock significantly than what it already is.
No, I think you made a mistake too. Firstly, running backs have a short shelf life, so get in the league as soon as possible. Secondly, and I'm not trying to knock them, but if you look around the NFL, are there teams like the Eagles, the Chiefs that historically draft well? Yeah. There's also a lot of teams that are not running well, that draft poorly. So a guy's performance in 2 or 3 games in the playoffs can impact how they rank their players, even though they really should be basing their evaluations on their full career. There are definitely teams that do an awful job, and they allow 1 or 2 games to influence their board. So he would have definitely gone higher than anticipated. I don't think he would have been at first, but I do think he would have been a second-round pick based on that performance, even though I don't think that's where his physical talent warrants him going. Some team would have taken him there. They would have bought the hype. So, yes, I agree. He made a mistake. He should have come out.
And you make a good point, because I think at the end of the day, no matter how much experience you have as a scout, you make a good point, because I think it's just human nature. Like, the last impression that you have of that player always kind of sits in your cranium. And so, like, to me, the lasting image of Mark Fletcher just running through defenses right into that national championship, it's hard, right? Because it's just the human nature element of the evaluation process, right? Like, we're all human, and I think 100%. It's almost a natural thing that recency bias, right? And it's a real thing.
Oh, without question. I mean, that's one of the reasons one of my first bosses in the business always used to say, yeah, it's great. We can talk about all the great things he's done. But he said, I definitely at least want to see a clip of the 15 or 20 bad plays, because I want to get an idea for, hey, what maybe is an issue. And then if you identify something in those bad plays, then you as a staff can sit down and watch film to identify, were those just bad plays, or is that a limitation that we have to be paying attention to, because you never want to get too high, but you also don't want to kill a kid for one or two bad plays. So yes, that recent game bias has definitely impacted. I mean, not even games. Look at the Senior Bowl. Chris Williams, right? Guy that many people in the NFL said this kid's not a high competitor as an offensive lineman, even though he's an elite athlete, probably more of a second round type guy. He has 3 unbelievable days at the Senior Bowl. He competes like a warrior, plays like his hair's on fire. And all of a sudden people think, okay, we're going to be able to get him to play with that aggressive physical mentality. And he goes 4th overall. And it's not to knock Chris. He's a great kid, good guy, but he just didn't have that sort of aggressiveness throughout his college career. But those 3 days in Mobile changed opinions. So yeah, what you're saying, that recency bias plays a huge factor.
By the way, speaking of the Senior Bowl, which you are now a member of the scouting department there, Drew Fabiazzi, how's his last name? How do you say it? Drew
Fabianich.
He was recently on a show, and the show is now slipping my mind, but it was such a great interview and so much insight. I think the show was based in Texas, but if you Google his name, he doesn't do many long in-person interviews like this. It was just such an educational, it was about an hour-long interview. And I think it was with Brian Brodus.
Oh yeah, I did see the
yeah.
I think one of the things
Brian Brodus.
And there was one other guy on there.
Yeah,
I can't remember who it was.
Mosher, I think Mosher.
Yeah,
Marcus
Jeff Mosher.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think the thing that people don't understand is if a guy doesn't become a GM in the NFL, a lot of people in the public think, oh, he's not, like, he's just a guy. He's a scouting person. But if you speak to these guys like Drew, like Jim Nagy, who spent 20 plus years in the NFL. I mean, Drew was with the Cowboys for, I think it was 22 years.
Yeah.
Then he was a GM at 2 different colleges. You talk about a guy that has experience. He knows football inside and out. He knows ball. So, I mean, he's going to be able to sit down and not just break down the basics, but he's going to be able to get into the nitty gritty of how things work, both at the college and the pro level. And I think that's something that people don't understand. You don't have to be the guy who sits in the GM's chair to be the guy that has better insight. A lot of the time, the guy that gets to that spot, there are a lot of things that go into it. Because I will tell you, there are people like Steve Malin, Jeff Shively, though they've been in this league, have been doing this for 20 years. Mike DeReese, Dave Rosano, that know as much, if not more, than every GM, but they never got that chance. And Drew's a perfect example of that. So smart, knows ball inside and out. Anytime you get a chance to listen to someone like Drew talk ball, you're going to learn a lot.
Oh yeah, no, I learned a lot from that interview and just some of the war room stories and his past history, and then leading up to just his outlook and philosophy on the Senior Bowl and how they assemble the roster. And that's something that you'll be involved with firsthand. So we look forward to that. Of course, the Senior Bowl watch list should be coming out later this summer. Of course, that's always another kind of baseline for the scouting community to just be aware of, hey, who's the Senior Bowl looking at? Because we all know what a prestigious event that is and what it means for those players. So that brings us to the conclusion of our running back preview show. Russ, next week we'll break down the wide receivers. And this year's wide receiver class, not as sexy, but I thought it was still talented. But next year's wide receiver class, man, this I don't want to hype it up too much, but man, this could be a very historic type of wide receiver.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, obviously it starts with Jeremiah Smith, the guy that people have been hyping for 2 years as the guy that could be the first overall pick. But you're talking about a class that, I mean, we've gotten, I think, into the habit now where we regularly expect 4 to 6 receivers to go in the first round. I think we could be talking maybe 7, 8, 9 next year. I mean, it's going to be a big class. And I think what's interesting is you're going to see there's going to be some 5'10", 5'11", just jitterbug explosive dudes. There's going to be some big 6 foot plus guys too. There's a wide range of talent. I'm excited to get to look at these guys. And there's also, as always, there's going to be 1 or 2 receivers, comes out of nowhere, has 1,600 yards receiving, that's going to vault himself into the top 4 or 5 receivers. I cannot wait to get my hands on the film and start watching these receivers.
Yeah, we'll come back next week. It'll be like being in the ice cream store with all the flavors
Yeah,
that this
like
wide
basket
receiver
round.
class has. So looking forward to that. Any good Memorial Day plans here for you, Russ, out there in Chicago?
Yeah, we got a little barbecue if it stays dry at a friend's house today, and then we got another one tomorrow at someone else's house. So it's a little bit of craziness, but excited just to get the chance to see friends and spend time and catch up before the summer gets a rolling full speed.
Yeah, well, the summer is kicking off here on Memorial Day weekend. We'll be back at it again next week, and we're going to let Russ go. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I'm just going to update you on some of the latest happenings over at allaccessfootball.com to be on the lookout for as we continue our 2027 NFL draft coverage. Russ, always appreciate the time, my man. We'll catch up next week and talk some wide receivers. Looking forward to it.
That sounds awesome, man. I always love our Sunday chats. It's a lot of fun.
Yep. All right. We'll do it again next Sunday. New time, new day. We're excited for that. So what we're going to do here is, again, take a quick break. I'll come back and we'll talk about some of the happenings going on at allaccessfootball.com. Rick Serritella here for allaccessfootball.com. Thanks for watching our live stream coverage of the 2026 NFL Draft. Just a quick programming reminder, the All Access Football Draft Watch Show airs every Saturday morning live at 10 a.m. Eastern with yours truly, along with my co-host, Russ Lande, who brings 30 years of NFL, CFL, and XFL scouting experience. Each and every week, we count you down with hard-hitting analysis, the prospects, the names you need to know. The countdown is on. Destination Washington, D.C. begins now. Make sure you tune in every Saturday morning live, 10 a.m. Eastern, as we count you down to the nation's capital for the 2027 NFL Draft. Your home for year-round coverage of the NFL Draft and everything pigskin, bringing you the names you need to know first since 2002. It's what we do. Make sure you follow along with the NFL Draft Bible, the official Bible of the draft, used by all 32 NFL teams. Thank you so much for supporting independent media. Now, back to our 2026 live stream coverage of the NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. Buckle up! All right, back at it again. Rick Serritella here to put a ribbon on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. You were tuned in to our 2027 running back preview show with Russ Lande, and just a great exercise for us to get you ready for the upcoming season. We'll do this each and every week leading into the training camp. We'll do wide receivers next week, and by the time we wrap up our positional preview series through June and into early July, it'll kind of take us to that midway July point where teams are getting ready for training camp. So each and every week, we'll have a new position to break down. We appreciate you tuning in. If you made it to this portion of the show, it means you made it through the full hour of power. And I think that might actually require, let's go. We are independent media. This is our 25th year of independent coverage. So we appreciate that love and support so much. Please smash that like button. Share it, subscribe it, wherever you may be tuned in, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X. We're here live each and every Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern. So we thank you so much. If you want to take it a step further, you can support us over at allaccessfootball.com. We have our 2027 NFL Draft Tracker series going on, and we just actually concluded. I think Vanderbilt was posted. I uploaded it today. It'll post tomorrow. And I think that will conclude our SEC draft watch. And so we're going through just ranking the top prospects from each program, kind of giving an overview of each school and some of their draft history, players drafted, things of that nature. We'll be kicking off our Big Ten NFL Draft Tracker series, I guess, on Tuesday. That will begin with Illinois. We have Indiana will be Thursday, I believe. And then sandwiched in between is our Wednesday pop-up show special presentation. We talked about it at the top of the show. The Continental Football League, Commissioner Mike Kelly will join us Wednesday. That'll be at 10 a.m. Eastern, so you can hear straight from the commish where to watch, how to watch, some of the notable players. We mentioned Obi Melifonwu, former first-round pick, is in the league. Some quarterbacks to keep an eye on. I caught some of the preseason action last night. They had 3 games streaming. Very good viewership. Some of the games drew over 5,000 viewers. And I want to remind everybody, this is a league that's basically on a no budget. I mean, these players are making about $400 per game. Okay. They're doing it for the love, and there's a lot of talent in the league. So keep an eye out. United Football Media is your home for the live stream coverage for the Continental Football League. Of course, United Football League also in action. Have been trying to keep up with it the best I can with the Canadian Football League also kicking off. We've been keeping tabs on it the best we can. And UFL is going now into the final week. Orlando and DC have clinched. We had a couple games yesterday. Columbus came back. I was watching that game. Jalen out of A&M, Florida A&M, the quarterback there, I think, led the comeback 36-29 over Birmingham. Orlando beat DC 27-19. Doubleheader today. Dallas Renegades at Louisville Kings at 4:00 on Fox. St. Louis Battlehawks at the Houston Gamblers, 7 p.m. on ESPN2. Yesterday, the game was overlapped by the softball game on ABC, so they had to start on ESPN News. So just be careful of your programming alerts there. And, man, looking forward to the UFL playoffs, the kickoff of the Canadian Football League. They have another week of preseason, I believe. The Continental Football League officially kicks off tomorrow on Monday. And we're excited to be talking pigskin because allaccessfootball.com is your home for the NFL draft. Everything pigskin. Again, keep it locked, nonstop, can't stop, won't stop draft coverage over at allaccessfootball.com. Of course, if you do subscribe there, it includes the 2027 NFL Draft Bible. And this past year's edition had 567 in-depth scouting reports. We're hoping to do better for the 2027 NFL Draft. Big shout out to our whole front office scouting department at the NFL Draft Bible. And I'm talking about Dom Ambrose, Lauren Davidoff, Will Donahue. We just added Sky from Canada. We have expanded our front office staff now to include Sky. His last name is slipping my mind. He just started with us this week. So they're doing a phenomenal job. Can't thank them enough. Of course, Jarrett Regal, can't forget about him. Also a member of the Dream Bowl scouting staff. So much great football going on year round. And that's why you need to tune in to the All Access Football Draft Watch show each and every Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern, primarily focused on the NFL draft. But as you can see, we touch base on everything football. So again, thank you to Russ Lande, my co-host each and every week here on the Draft Watch show, checking in from Chicago. I was Rick Serritella, broadcasting live from New Jersey. We'll come back and do it again next week when we preview our 2027 big board for the wide receivers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend. Buckle up, and we'll see you next Sunday.